The auctioneer's hammer came down hard. Sold. $1,000. That was my price. The whole town watched as I stepped off that platform. No longer a merchant's daughter, but property. The man who bought me was a widower named Nathan Hale, a quiet stranger with 2 wild children who had already driven away 4 housekeepers. Everyone expected me to break. Everyone expected me to run. But what nobody knew, not even me, was that the man who bought my freedom would be the one to give it back. And those angry little children who swore to make my life miserable would one day call me Mama. This is a story about how the worst day of my life led me to everything I never knew I needed. But first, you need to understand what it feels like to be sold, and why I refuse to let it define me. This story proves that your lowest moment does not have to be your final chapter. It is for every woman who has ever felt trapped, judged, or written off by the world. Eliza reminds us that we always have a choice, even when it feels like we have none. If you believe that love can grow in the most unexpected places, drop a comment and tell me what part of this story touched you. Hit that like button if you are rooting for second chances, and subscribe so you never miss a story that reminds you just how powerful you truly are. The auctioneer's hammer came down hard. Sold to Nathan Hale. $1,000 was a fortune, the kind of money that made folks whisper. Eliza stepped down from that platform, leaving her old life behind. Every person in Copper Ridge watched her go, their eyes full of judgment. She was no longer a merchant's daughter. She was property. The man who bought her, Nathan Hale, was a widower who kept to himself up in the hills. He was a lean, hard-working man, maybe 30 years old. His eyes did not show kindness or cruelty, just a deep weariness. He told her to get her things, but she had nothing left. The creditors had taken it all. He just nodded and led her to his wagon. Men who had once courted her now could not even look her in the eye. The shame was a heavy weight. His wagon was built for work, not comfort. Nathan helped her up, his calloused hand a reminder of the hard life she was entering. She asked him where his ranch was, and he told her it was 2 hours out of town. 2 hours away from everything she had ever called home. He had children, he said. Twins, Milo and Clara, who were 6 years old. Their mother had passed away 3 years earlier. The silence in the wagon was heavy as Copper Ridge disappeared behind them. The road got rougher, and the heat was relentless. Nathan finally spoke again, his voice strained. He said other housekeepers had not lasted long. The longest one only stayed for 3 months. He admitted the twins were a handful, still angry and grieving their mother. They did not trust strangers. He said he worked from sunup to sundown and could not give them the attention they needed. He needed someone strong, someone who would not run away. She looked at him and said, "You think because you bought my contract, I cannot run?" He met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something more than exhaustion. He told her a woman who could stand on that auction block with her head held high had more backbone than the others. He needed that strength for his children. His honesty was a surprise. Underneath his rough exterior was a desperate father trying to hold his family together. She asked what he expected from her. He listed the chores: keep the house, cook, mind the children, and tend the garden. He had paid a high price, and he expected her to earn it. For 5 years, she would work, and then she would be free with a settlement payment. That was the agreement. As they arrived, the ranch house came into view. It was a solid log home, weathered but sturdy. Before the wagon even stopped, the front door flew open, and 2 small children appeared on the porch. They were identical, with dark hair and bare feet, and they stared at Eliza with pure suspicion. "Is this the new one?" the boy Milo asked. Nathan told them to mind their manners, but the girl, Clara, just crossed her arms and said the last one did not stay long either. Nathan's voice was firm. He told them Miss Moore was there to stay, and they would treat her with respect. Milo then asked a cruel question, the kind only a wounded child could ask. Did you buy her like you bought the new mirror for Mama? The words hit Nathan hard, but he just told the children to get inside. The twins slammed the door, leaving Nathan standing there for a long moment. He then helped Eliza down from the wagon, apologizing for their behavior. He said they were just testing her, trying to see if she would break like the others. She thought about everything she had lost, the humiliation of the auction, and the pain of watching her family fall apart. She looked at him and spoke quietly. "Mr. Hale, I have already been broken. Nothing your children can do will be worse than what I have already lived through." A look of respect crossed his face as he nodded. He led her inside the house. It was clean, but plain, a house that was kept but not loved. There were no curtains, no flowers, nothing to make it a home. The twins were gone, but Eliza knew they were watching, waiting for her to fail, just like all the others. Well, here is a story about a woman who had everything taken from her, only to find her strength when she had nothing left. You ever feel like the world has dealt you a bad hand? Eliza sure did. Staring at the simple bed in her new room, she knew she had been sold like cattle. But this little room, it was a kingdom compared to the charity cot she had left behind. Nathan, the man who had bought her contract, pointed. "The kids are across the hall. I am down at the end. Breakfast at dawn." He left her with a quick, "There is food in the icebox." And then she was all alone. The truth of it washed over her. She was stuck on a remote ranch with a grieving man and 2 children who already hated her. She could have broken down right then. But Eliza knew tears were useless. You do not choose the hand you are dealt, but you sure as heck can choose how you play it. So she straightened her dress and went to find the kitchen. Work had to be done. Making a meal was second nature to her. She had learned to make something from nothing back at her father's place. The pantry here was full, which was a pleasant surprise. Nathan might be a hard man, but he did not starve his family. Just as she set some bread and cheese on the table, she heard a sound. The twins, Milo and Clara, were standing in the doorway, staring her down. "Are you all hungry?" she asked, her voice calm. "We can get our own food," Milo snapped back. "I am sure you can," she said gently, "but I made extra." They looked at each other, then slowly came and sat down, ready to run at a moment's notice. They ate like little wolves, fast and nervous. She watched them and understood. These were babies who had lost their mama. "How old were you all when your mother passed?" she asked softly. Milo looked up, his eyes hard. "Who?" "Your mother." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes. "We were 3. "You do not know nothing about us," Milo shot back. "You are right, I do not," Eliza said, meeting his angry stare. "But I know what it is like to have it all ripped away. My own mother died when I was 10. My daddy lost everything we owned. When he passed, I was left with nothing. That is how I ended up being sold." The children just stared, taking it all in. Then Clara asked in a small voice, "Did it hurt?" Eliza did not lie. "Yes, it hurt something awful." "Still does." "Then why are you here?" Milo asked. "Because sometimes you just have to walk through the pain. Now your father tells me you have run off 4 other housekeepers." Clara's chin jutted out. "Good. We do not want you here either." Eliza leaned in. "I understand. But listen here. I am not leaving. Your father paid for my contract, and I aim to see it through. That is 5 years. We can fight the whole time, or we can find a way to live together. It is up to you all." Milo clenched his jaw. "We will make you leave." Eliza gave a small smile. "You can surely try. But I have survived worse than a couple of tough kids." They all sat there for a bit, sizing each other up. Then Clara reached for a piece of apple. It was not a surrender, but it was a start. That is how Nathan found them when he came in from the barn. He stopped dead in his tracks, a flicker of surprise on his face. "Bedtime," was all he said. The twins left without a fuss, but little Clara stopped by Eliza's chair. "Your room is tiny," she said. Smaller than Mama's room was. Eliza just nodded. It will do. Nathan watched them go, then turned to Eliza, his face a mask. They spoke to you. They put me through a test, she corrected. The last one said they put a snake in her bed. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Did they? Just a little garden snake, he admitted. But I sent her packing the next morning. Why did not you punish them? He sighed, a sound full of weariness. I have tried. It only makes them meaner. Ever since their mother, Martha, passed, something in this house just shattered. Eliza could hear the raw hurt in his voice. You cannot punish pain away, Mr. Hale. They are not bad children. They are acting up because they are scared to death. Scared of what? He asked. Of caring about someone who will just up and leave them again. She started clearing the dishes. Every person you have brought here has just proved them right. They figure it is better to push folks away first. Nathan just watched her, silent for a long time. You got all that from one night? I know the feeling, she said quietly. The only difference is I am grown. I know you have to take a chance on people sometimes. His next question caught her off guard. Is that why you did not cry today? She turned from the wash basin to look him in the eye. Oh, I have shed my share of tears. But I was not about to give those men the satisfaction of seeing me break. I would not give them my pride. You are tougher than you look, he said. I had to be. Your children need someone strong, Mr. Hale. Someone who will not run when things get hard. And you will not run? That was the real question. She thought about the 5 long years ahead, about this broken man and his hurt children. It was a heavy burden, but being sold was not part of her plan either. I gave you my word, she said plainly. I will see it through. 5 years. Nathan looked at her long and hard, searching for any sign she might break. Whatever he found seemed to be enough. He just nodded. Morning comes early. As he turned to leave, he stopped. Miss Moore? Yes? Thank you for not running off. The words meant more than he said. After he left, Eliza finished in the kitchen, getting the feel of the place. The house itself was strong, just needed some heart put back into it. Later, in her little room, she looked out at the big starry sky. 5 years. That is how long she had in this place, bought and paid for, working for a quiet man and his 2 wild children. She should have felt like she was in a cage. But lying there in the dark, she felt something else entirely. It was not quite hope, but it was close. She felt fragile, like she could shatter with one wrong move. But there was a sliver of hope. She had made it through the auction. She had endured the shame and lost everything she ever knew. She could get through this too. And maybe, just maybe, in getting through it, she might find a real way to live. That single thought was enough to carry her into a peaceful sleep. When the sun came up over the hills, Eliza Moore got out of bed, ready for her first day in the Hale household. She was determined to be worth every cent Nathan had spent on her. The kitchen was still dark when she entered, but Eliza moved like she'd been there for years. She got a fire going in the stove, found the coffee, and started some oatmeal. By the time Nathan showed up, the smell of fresh biscuits and frying bacon filled the whole house. He just stood there, completely surprised. No need for all this, he started. It's what you hired me for, Eliza said, not missing a beat as she cracked eggs into a bowl. The scent of food soon drew the twins, who peeked around the doorframe like a couple of cautious little animals. Breakfast is on the table, Eliza told them. Come eat before it gets cold. For a second, nobody moved. Then Nathan sat down, and the twins slowly followed. For the first time since their mother passed, the family ate a meal together. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. And Eliza knew that a beginning was all you really needed. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Eliza was up before the sun, getting meals on the table 3 times a day. She scrubbed and swept and dusted, bringing a shine back to the forgotten corners of the house. The work never ended, but there was an honest satisfaction in it. The twins watched her every move, expecting her to give up and leave. They'd track mud across a floor she had just mopped or forget to gather the eggs. Clara would hide her hairbrush, and Milo once knocked over a bucket of water she had just carried from the well. Eliza never said a word. She just mopped the floor again, found the eggs, and patiently worked the tangles out of Clara's hair. She refilled the bucket without a single complaint. She simply refused to break. Nathan saw it all. He'd leave at sunrise to work the ranch, and come back at sundown, tired and smelling of hard work. He ate what she cooked with a quiet gratitude. He was a man just trying to survive, and Eliza understood that kind of exhaustion deep in her bones. About 3 weeks later, Clara caught a cold. The little girl was just miserable. Eliza fixed her some hot tea with honey and lemon and tucked her into bed. She sat with her and told her stories from when she was a little girl. "Did your mama tell you stories?" Clara asked, her voice all stuffy. "Every single night," Eliza said with a soft smile. "In her stories, the girls saved themselves. She always said waiting on a prince was a waste of good courage." Clara thought about that for a moment. "I can't remember Mama's stories anymore," she whispered, and the sadness in her voice was heartbreaking. "Then I will tell you new ones," Eliza said gently. "Why?" Clara's eyes turned sharp. "You're just the housekeeper. You'll leave. I gave your father my word, and I keep my word." "Grown-ups always say that," Clara muttered. "Then they leave." Eliza looked right at her. "I am here, and I am healthy, and I am not going anywhere. I reckon you're stuck with me." Clara just stared, looking for a lie. When she couldn't find one, her brave little face just crumpled. "I miss her so much," she cried. "I can't even remember what she looked like." Eliza pulled the little girl into a hug, as 3 years of held-back tears finally came pouring out. She just held her and rocked her until Clara cried herself to sleep. Nathan found them that way a while later. He looked at his daughter sleeping in Eliza's arms, and a look of pure pain crossed his face. "She hasn't cried since the funeral," he said, his voice low. "The doctor said kids sometimes bury it deep. And it comes out as anger," Eliza finished for him, "as pushing people away." He nodded, reaching down to stroke his daughter's hair. "How did you do it?" "I did not do anything. She just needed to feel safe," Eliza said softly. "She needed to know her sadness wouldn't make me run off." Nathan's jaw tightened. "The others said the children were spoiled." "You cannot punish grief away, Mr. Hale. You have to give it room to breathe before it can ever heal." He looked at her then, really saw her. "You understand grief?" She gave a weak smile. "I understand pretending to be fine when you're breaking apart on the inside." "Is that what I do?" The question was so raw it made Eliza's chest ache. "I think you feel everything, Mr. Hale. You are just afraid if you start letting it out, you will not be able to stop." He did not say anything, just carefully lifted Clara from her arms to take her to bed. The next morning, Clara sat right next to Eliza at breakfast. When Eliza gave her oatmeal, she whispered, "Thank you." Milo saw it right away. "Why are you being nice to her?" "Because she was nice to me," Clara said. "And she's not leaving." "You don't know that," Milo shot back. "Yes, I do. She promised." Milo looked at Eliza, still suspicious. But for the first time, there was a little bit of hope in his eyes, too. That afternoon, he found Eliza in the kitchen kneading dough. "Can you teach me how to do that?" he asked. Eliza looked up, surprised by his question. "You want to make bread?" He nodded. "Pa says men do not belong in a kitchen, but you said girls can save themselves. Why can't boys take care of themselves?" A smile touched her lips. "That is a smart thought. Go on and wash your hands." For the next hour, she showed him how to work the dough just right and shape it. The boy was all business, soaking up every word. As they set the loaves to rise, he hit her with a sharp question. "Why did your pa gamble it all away?" He was testing her, looking for a weakness. She met his gaze directly. After my mama passed, he tried to bury his hurt in cards. But you cannot bet away sorrow. You have to face it. Does it ever get smaller? Milo asked, wiping flour on his pants. It does, if you let it. He thought a moment. Is that why Clara cries? Yes. Well, I do not cry. Neither does Papa. Eliza looked at the serious 6-year-old. Tears do not mean you are weak, Milo. Sometimes they are what give you the strength to keep going. He said nothing, but his shoulders lost some of their stiffness. Later, when the perfect golden brown loaves came from the oven, his face shone with pride. I really made that, he whispered. You sure did, Eliza told him. And you are a natural. At supper, Nathan noticed the bread right away. This is good work. Milo made it, Eliza said. I just watched over him. Nathan stared at his son, surprised. Milo gave a shy nod. Miss Moore taught me. Said boys ought to know how to take care of themselves, too. A flicker of understanding passed between them. Nathan reached out and awkwardly ruffled Milo's hair. Good job, son. Your mama would be mighty proud. Milo's eyes welled up, but he broke into a true smile that changed his whole face. He looked like a little boy again. That evening, after Clara gave Eliza a fierce hug goodnight, Milo paused at the door. Can we make cinnamon rolls tomorrow? If you help with the chores first, she answered. Deal. Nathan stayed behind as she tended the fire. You are making a difference here, he said softly. They are good kids. They just needed someone to look past their tough shell. It is more than that. He rested against the doorframe. You see them as people, not just chores. You act like their feelings are important. Their feelings are important. The others, he started, shaking his head. They just manage the children. You try to understand them. Eliza faced him. I was a girl who needed understanding once. My mama gave it to me. After she was gone, nobody else did. I will not do that to your children. A bitter tone entered his voice. Even though I bought your contract like a head of cattle. The harshness in his voice was surprising. Do you regret buying me? I regret the kind of world that makes a woman sell her freedom. And I regret my part in it. He met her gaze. But I do not regret you being here. This place has not felt like a home in 3 years, until now. The confession hung in the air. Mr. Hale. Nathan. When we are alone, please call me Nathan. The name felt too familiar on her tongue. I am doing the job you hired me for. It is more than a job, or you were needed to help heal my family. She stood tall. That does not change why I am here. I am here on a contract, Nathan. For 5 years. We should not forget that. He winced at her sharp reminder, but gave a slight nod. You are right. I am sorry. No need for apologies. We both understand the arrangement. But as he left, her heart pounded in her chest. Everything she said was true. She was here because she had no other choice. Yet this place no longer felt like a prison. It felt like something far more dangerous. She could not let herself care for Nathan or love these children beyond her duty. In 5 years, she would take her money and build a new life far away from this ranch. That was the only plan that made sense. So why did the idea of leaving already feel like a fresh wound? As the summer wore on, Eliza fell into the rhythm of the ranch. The twins took her on adventures, delighted that she could almost keep up. Clara introduced her to every chicken, while Milo showed her where the baby foxes played at twilight. They filled the house with wildflowers, bringing beauty back into the long-neglected rooms. Nathan saw it all happening. He watched with a sense of awe. He began coming home for supper, telling stories about his cattle that made the children laugh. Now and then Eliza would catch him watching her from across the table, his expression holding more than just thanks. She did her best to ignore it, to keep a safe distance between them. But that was a hard thing to do on a small ranch, especially when their hands would touch at the well, or when she had to mend his shirts. One hot July evening, a fierce storm blew in without warning. Thunder rattled the windows. Clara ran screaming into Eliza's room and jumped into her bed. "It is okay, sweet girl," Eliza whispered, holding her tight. "We are safe from the storm." "Mama went away in a storm just like this one," Clara cried. Just then, Milo showed up in the doorway, pretending to be brave. Eliza pulled back the covers. "Get in here, both of you." They huddled on either side of her as she held them close, singing the old soft lullabies her own mother used to sing to her. The little ones were finally quiet, their breathing slow and easy. Nathan found them that way close to midnight, after the big storm had finally blown itself out. Moonlight spilled through the window, lighting up the three of them. Eliza with a child tucked in on each side, all fast asleep. He just stood there watching for a good long while. He gently picked up Milo and carried him to his own bed. When he came back for Clara, his hand brushed against Eliza's shoulder and she woke with a start. "Nathan, the storm is over. I will get her back to her room. She was scared. Said Martha passed away in a storm just like this." A shadow of pain crossed his face. "She did." He lifted his sleeping daughter. "I try, but the storms just make them remember." "Let me help," Eliza said, getting up to follow him. They tucked Clara in together. Back in the hall, Nathan took her hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice low, "for being here for them. For all of it." His hand was warm and rough from work. Eliza knew she should pull back, that she was just the hired help. Instead, she gave his fingers a small squeeze. "They are easy kids to love," she said. "They are not the only ones." The words just hung there in the quiet hall. Nathan's eyes were dark and serious, and her heart started to thump against her ribs. "We cannot," she whispered. "I know. I am just under contract." "You bought me. This is not right. It cannot be." "I know," he said again. But he did not let go. "I am sorry, Eliza. I am sorry for the way you came to be here. I am sorry I took part in a system that treats women like they are property." "Then why did you buy my contract?" "Because I was at the end of my rope," he said, his voice rough with truth. "My kids needed somebody, and I had failed them. When I saw you on that platform with your head held high, I thought, she is strong enough. She will not break. I needed your strength." His thumb brushed over her hand. "It is not fair to you, but I cannot be sorry you are here, because you have brought my family back to life." Tears welled up in Eliza's eyes. "In 5 years, I am gone. That is the agreement. I know we cannot do this. It will just make it all harder." He knew it, she knew it, but still he held her hand. They stood in the dark, knowing it was impossible, knowing they should walk away, but neither of them moved a muscle. Finally, Eliza made herself step back. "Good night, Nathan." "Good night, Eliza." She went to her room and leaned against the closed door, her heart pounding. This was a fool's game, and she could not afford to love this man. She could not afford a future with Nathan Hale, not beyond the papers she had signed. But her heart, it seemed, was already making other plans. The morning sun came up fierce and bright, pretending the night storm never happened. Eliza woke and went to the kitchen to start breakfast. What happened in the dark had to stay in the dark. In the daylight, he was the boss and she was the help. But when Nathan came into the kitchen, their eyes met and held for a second too long. Then Clara ran in, hollering for pancakes, and the spell was broken. The twins were different that day, lighter somehow. They chattered and laughed through breakfast, planning to go check the creek. Nathan watched them, a look of wonder on his face, like he had forgotten what his own children's happiness looked like. "Can Miss Eliza come with us to the creek?" Milo asked. Miss Eliza has chores to do, Nathan started to say. The chores can wait a bit, Eliza said, surprising herself. If you do not mind. Nathan's face softened. I do not mind. So all four of them walked to the creek. The twins ran on ahead, and Nathan walked beside Eliza. They are different since you came, he said quietly. It is like they are waking up from a long, bad dream. They needed someone to let them be kids again, and I could not do it. I was too buried in my own grief. He picked up a smooth, flat rock from the path. Martha would have been ashamed of how I let things go. Martha would have understood that grief takes its own sweet time, Eliza said, watching the kids splash ahead. You did what you could, Nathan. You kept them fed and safe. That is not nothing. It was not enough. It was what you had, she told him. You are doing better now. They can see it. He was quiet for a bit. I am trying. It is just hard to let myself feel again. It is easier to work until I am too tired to think. I understand that, she said softly. I know you do. Up ahead, Clara was wading bravely in the water and Milo was studying something on a big rock. Papa, look, Clara shouted, holding up a shiny piece of quartz. It is beautiful, sweetheart. Nathan's voice was warm. He turned to Eliza. Can you swim? Never learned how. He looked surprised. But you grew up near a river. My father said it was not proper for a lady. Eliza gave a small smile. There were a lot of things he did not approve of. And did you always listen? Until I had no other choice, she said, looking him in the eye. Sometimes following the rules just gets you stuck in a different kind of prison. And now I have put you in a real one. This is not a prison, Nathan. It is a job, she said firmly. When I stood on that auction block, I had nothing. You gave me a place where I am needed, a place where I can help two sweet children. That is not a prison, that is a purpose. He looked at her like she had just solved the mysteries of the universe. You humble me, Eliza Moore. That is not what I am trying to do. I know. That is why it does. He looked over at the children. They love you, you know. They are learning to trust me. That is the first step. Before she could say more, a shout cut through the air. Papa! Milo yelled, pointing down the creek. There is a calf stuck in the mud. Nathan was already running, and Eliza was right behind him. They found a young calf sunk deep in the thick mud where the storm had washed out the bank. The poor thing was crying and struggling, only sinking deeper. She has been here a while, Nathan said, kicking off his boots. Keep the kids back, Eliza. This mud is treacherous. He waded into the muck, but it was clear he could not do it alone. The mud had a powerful grip. He got a rope on the calf, but when he pulled, it just panicked and nearly pulled him under. I need help, he yelled, straining. Eliza did not think twice. She kicked off her shoes and plunged into the cold, sucking mud. Tell me what to do, she said, grabbing the rope. When I say pull, you pull with everything you have got. They got on either side of that poor, struggling calf. The creek mud was already chest-deep, thick as molasses, and pulling them down with every move. It was a dangerous spot to be. Nathan's face was set like stone. On his signal, they pulled together with everything they had. The little calf bawled and fought, and for a heart-stopping moment, nothing gave. Just the awful suck of the mud and their own burning lungs. Then, inch by agonizing inch, the calf started to give way. Keep on, Nathan yelled. Don't you stop! Eliza pulled until her arms felt like they'd come right out of their sockets. From the bank, the twins were shouting for them to keep going. With one last desperate lunge, the calf scrambled free, showering them in mud and water. The sudden lack of resistance sent Eliza tumbling backward right into the greedy mud. But before it could swallow her, Nathan's arm locked around her waist, hauling her upright with a strength that surprised her. They just stood there a second, covered in muck, catching their breath. Eliza could feel his heart hammering against her back. You all right? he asked, his voice a low gravel. She was fine, but he held on. "Papa, Miss Eliza, y'all are covered in mud." Milo's happy shout broke the spell. Nathan let her go, and they sloshed back to the bank. Eliza looked down at her ruined dress and filthy hands. She must have looked a sight. A laugh bubbled out of her, and soon Nathan and the twins joined in, their laughter echoing in the morning sun. "Y'all saved her," Claire said, her voice full of pride. "Together." Nathan looked at Eliza, his eyes holding a warm, complicated light. "We sure did. Good teamwork, Miss Moore." "Likewise, Mr. Hale." They walked back to the ranch house, a muddy crew with a grateful calf trotting right behind them. The twins chattered the whole way, acting out the rescue. It felt just like a family, Eliza thought. The idea should have scared her, but instead it settled in her heart, like a warm ember. Back at the house, Nathan went to see to the calf properly, while Eliza heated water for baths. She scrubbed the twins clean first, then finally washed the mud from her own aching body. The hot water was a blessing, and she soaked for a moment, thinking of Nathan's arm around her waist. She knew she was wading into deep water with him, but it seemed she couldn't stop herself. That evening, Nathan came to supper looking clean and fresh. The calf was doing just fine, he announced, already back with its mama. After the children were put to bed, he stayed in the kitchen while Eliza cleaned. "Thank you for today," he said quietly. "You didn't have to get in that mud." "Yes, I did. You couldn't have done it alone. Most women would have stayed on the bank." "Well, I'm not most women," Eliza said, placing a plate on the rack. He moved closer, his presence filling the small space. "We make a good team," he said, his voice low and serious. "Eliza, I know I shouldn't say this. I know it crosses all sorts of lines, but I have to be honest. I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air, plain and true. "Maybe it started the day I saw you on that auction platform refusing to be broken. I do not know when, but I know it's real." Eliza's hands froze in the dishwater. She felt like she couldn't draw a breath. "You can't. I'm just your contracted help. You bought me." "I know," he said, and the words were full of pain. He gently took her wet hand in his, "And I hate that part of it. I hate that you are here because you had no choice. But I can't be sorry that you are here, Eliza. In 5 years I will leave," she whispered. "That is the agreement." "Then we have 5 years," he answered, his thumb tracing a circle on her skin. "Or we find another way. But I can't stand here and pretend I don't feel this way." "I feel it too," she admitted, her voice barely there. "I have tried so hard not to." "So what do we do?" he asked. She looked up at this strong, quiet man who was slowly coming back to life. "This is complicated, Nathan. The power difference between us. I would never use that contract against you. Never." "I know," she said. "But other folks will not see it that way. They will say I had no choice. Does it feel that way to you?" "No," she admitted. "But what I feel does not change how this looks." He was quiet a moment. Then he lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Then we keep it to ourselves for now. Until we figure it out." Well, he smiled a little. "The children already love you. Milo even asked me if you were going to be his new mama." Eliza's breath hitched. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you are our housekeeper and our friend," he said softly, "and that whether you stay is your choice. I will not trap you here, Eliza. You will always have a choice." That was more than most women ever got. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, a silent understanding passing between them. Then Eliza gently pulled her hand away and went back to the dishes. "We should be careful," she said. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and against all reason she smiled back. The weeks that followed were filled with a sweet, unspoken tension. They were careful around the children, but in the quiet moments, something real and wonderful grew between them. The twins thrived. Clara began to call her Liza, and Milo chattered away, seeking her opinion on everything. The little ranch house started to feel like a real home, full of life and healing. One afternoon in early September, Eliza was picking vegetables in the garden when she heard riders. 3 of them were coming up the drive. Nathan came out of the barn, his face instantly wary. Visitors were not a common thing. The lead rider was a well-dressed woman about 40 years old. The 2 men with her looked like hired hands. "Nathan Hale," she called out. "That is me. What can I do for you?" "I am Margaret Winters. I believe you know my brother, Thomas." Nathan's face became a mask. "I know him." "Then you know he wishes to expand his holdings. He has made you offers for this place." "And I have refused every single one," Nathan said, his voice flat. "Nothing has changed." Margaret swung down from her horse. "Perhaps something has. Thomas tells me you have been struggling since your wife passed, that this ranch has been in decline." Eliza felt a chill go down her spine. This woman was here to make trouble. "My ranch is doing just fine," Nathan said, his voice cold as ice. "And my business is not Thomas's concern." "He is a neighbor," she said with a thin smile. "Thomas Winters is a land grabber," Nathan's voice cut like a whip. "He has been circling this property like a vulture since my father died. Now you can tell him for me." The answer is still no. Margaret's gaze shifted to Eliza in the garden, a sly look on her face. "And who is this?" "My housekeeper, Miss Moore." "Your housekeeper," Margaret repeated, eyeing Eliza in a way that made her skin crawl. "How convenient. A young woman all alone out here with you. I imagine the people in Copper Ridge would find this arrangement very interesting." Eliza felt her face flush with anger. Before she could answer, Nathan stepped in front of her. "Be careful what you say, Mrs. Winters. Miss Moore is a respectable lady. If you are suggesting something else, you are wrong." "I am just pointing out how it appears," Margaret said with a cold smile. "It is a sweet picture, but romance does not pay the bills. Thomas's offer is more than generous." "Get off my land," Nathan said, his voice like cold steel. "Now." Her smile disappeared. She mounted her horse with a stiff back. "Thomas will not quit. He wants this land, and he is a patient man. You will make a mistake, and he will be there to pick up the pieces." She rode off, and Nathan stood rigid until she was out of sight. He turned to Eliza. "I am sorry you had to hear all of that. That woman had no business doing that. She's fixin' to spread ugly rumors." Eliza's voice quivered. "Folks round here don't know me, Nathan. All they see is the woman sold off like property. To them, my reputation is already ruined. This will hurt you, and worse, it will hurt your children." He stepped close and put his hands gently on her shoulders. "Listen to me. I don't give a damn what Margaret Winters or her snake of a brother thinks. The only thing that matters is the truth. You're doing honest work, and you've helped this family start to heal." "But has it been proper, Nathan?" Eliza looked up at him. "We're falling for each other. That ain't proper." "No," he said, his grip tightening. "But it's real, and I won't be ashamed of it." Just then, a shout came from the house. Clara stumbled through the door, her face all flushed. "Papa," she cried out, "I don't feel right." She started to fall, but Nathan caught her. He felt her forehead and cursed under his breath. "She's burning up, Eliza. Go check on Milo." Eliza rushed inside. Milo was curled up by the fireplace, shivering hard. His skin was hot as a skillet. "Nathan," she called out. "Milo's got it too." The next few hours were a whirlwind of quiet fear. They got the children into bed and made willow bark tea while Nathan rode like the wind to fetch the doctor. The twins tossed and turned, their fevers climbing dangerously high. Eliza bathed their faces with cool cloths, trying to get them to sip water. It felt like an eternity before Nathan returned with Dr. Morrison just after sundown. The old doctor checked them over. "It's a fever that's going around," he said, looking at Nathan. "Most young'uns pull through if you can keep the fever down. Cool baths, plenty of water, and willow bark tea. Call me if they start having fits. How long? Nathan's voice was raw. Could break in a day, could take 3 or 4. It's a waiting game now. After he left, a heavy silence fell between Nathan and Eliza. We'll take shifts, Eliza finally said. You take one, I'll take the other. I can't sleep, Nathan said. Not now. You have to, she insisted, taking his hand. We both do, or we'll be no good to them. We can do this, Nathan. Together. He pulled her into a sudden, tight hug. I can't lose them, Eliza. I just can't. You won't, she promised, holding him back. We won't let that happen. So they began their watch. Eliza sat with Clara, cooling her skin and whispering to her when she cried out. Across the hall, Nathan did the same for Milo. The first night felt like a year. The second day, the fevers held on, stubborn and cruel. Eliza was running on fumes, too worried to eat or sleep. On the third night, Clara's fever shot up and her little body went stiff. Eliza screamed for Nathan. Together they held the seizing child, helpless and terrified. Should I get the doctor? Nathan asked, his face pale as a ghost. There's nothing more he can do, Eliza said, her own hope fading. Nathan pulled her close as they knelt by the bed. I couldn't do this without you, he whispered. But I am here, she said. We're in this together. As dawn approached, Milo's fever finally broke. But Clara's clung on. Eliza sat beside her, completely wrung out, watching the little girl she had grown to love fight for her life. Nathan stood staring out the window, and she knew he was remembering another time he'd lost someone he loved. Talk to her, Eliza said suddenly. She needs to hear your voice. Tell her about her mother. Give her a reason to fight. So Nathan knelt by his daughter's side. With a voice thick with tears, he started telling stories about Martha, about the day the twins were born, and about how proud she would be of Clara. He spoke for an hour, his words filling the quiet room. And then, like a miracle, Clara's fever started to ease. By mid-morning, both children were sleeping soundly, their foreheads cool to the touch. The worst was over. Eliza tried to stand, her legs weak with relief and exhaustion. Nathan caught her, lifting her into his arms. I've got you, he said softly, carrying her to her own room. They're safe now. You can rest. He laid her down, but as he turned to leave, she grabbed his hand. Stay, she pleaded, just for a minute. He lay down beside her on top of the covers, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. You saved them, he whispered. You saved all of us. I don't know what I would have done if I'd had to face this alone. But you didn't have to, she murmured, sleep taking over. We're a team. She fell asleep right there in his arms, feeling safe for the first time in a long, long time. When Eliza woke, Nathan was gone, but she could still feel the warmth where he had been. After 3 days of pure terror, Eliza shot straight up in bed. Her legs were shaky as she hurried down the hall. Clara's room was empty, the bed made up neat as a pin. Panic grabbed her until she heard children's voices coming from the kitchen. She found them all at the table. The twins were eating soup, still pale, but their eyes were bright and clear. Nathan sat right between them, watching them with a look of such deep relief that Eliza's throat tightened up. Miss Eliza, Clara's face lit up. You're awake. Papa said you were sleeping because you stayed up taking care of us. I sure did. Eliza went over to them, checking Clara's forehead, then Milo's. Both were cool as a cucumber. How do you two feel? Tired, Milo said, and hungry. Papa made soup, but it's not as good as yours. I heard that, Nathan said with a grin. But when his eyes met Eliza's, they were warm with thanks, and something more. It is true, Clara added. Your soup is better, Miss Eliza. Papa uses too much salt. My soup kept you alive, young lady, Nathan teased, actually smiling. The twins giggled. Eliza just sank into a chair, overwhelmed by how normal it all was. After 3 long days of fear, this simple scene felt like a miracle. Dr. Morrison came by while you were sleeping, Nathan said. He checked on them both. He said they are through the worst of it. They need rest and good food, but they are going to be fine. Thank heavens. Eliza pressed her hands to her face, trying to hold back tears. I was so frightened. We know. Clara reached over and patted her hand. Papa said you did not sleep for 3 days, that you sat with me when I was sick and sang me songs. I did sing, did not I? Eliza smiled through her tears. I am not sure my singing helped, but it was all I could do. It helped, Nathan said quietly. It helped more than you will ever know. Their eyes locked across the table, and Eliza saw everything he was not saying in front of the children. She saw his fear, his gratitude, and his love. Something had changed during those long nights. A final wall between them had crumbled. They both knew it. Can Miss Eliza stay with us forever? Milo asked all of a sudden. Not just 5 years, forever. The question just hung there in the air. Nathan's face became carefully blank. Well, that is up to Miss Eliza, Nathan said slowly. Her contract is for 5 years. After that, she is free to go wherever she wants. But what if we want her to stay? Clara's voice was small. What if we need her? Then we would ask her, Nathan said, and hope she would want to stay too. In the following days, the twins slowly got their strength back. Eliza kept them quiet with stories and gentle games. Nathan hovered over them, checking constantly, like he was afraid they might just disappear. A week after the fever broke, the town gossip finally reached them. Dr. Morrison mentioned it casually. He said there was talk in town about Nathan's young housekeeper, about how it did not look right for a widower and a woman to be living in such a remote place. Nathan's face had turned hard as a rock. Let them talk. They are saying she was sold at auction because she was ruined, Morrison went on, clearly uncomfortable. That no respectable woman would ever accept a job like that, that you took advantage of her. Anyone who knows Eliza knows that is a lie. Maybe, but you know how people are. They love to imagine the worst. Morrison glanced toward where Eliza was reading to the twins. I am telling you this as a friend, Nathan. Be careful. Rumors like these can destroy people. After Morrison left, Nathan found Eliza in the garden pulling weeds with sharp, angry jerks. You heard, he said. The window was open. She did not look up. I do not care what they say. You should. Eliza sat back on her heels, wiping dirt from her hands. You have children to think about. If people believe these rumors, it will affect Clara and Milo. She stood up to face him. Nathan, maybe I should leave, find another job somewhere else. It would stop all the talk. His face went white. No. It might be for the best. No. He walked over to her, taking her by the shoulders. I will not let gossip drive you away. I will not lose you because small-minded people cannot see the truth. What is the truth? Eliza asked softly. That there is nothing improper between us. We both know that is not the whole story anymore. Nathan's jaw got tight. Nothing has happened that either of us should be ashamed of, but something is happening. We both feel it. And as long as I am your employee under that contract, anything between us will look like you are taking advantage of me. So what are you saying? That these 5 years have to be all we get? I am saying the contract makes everything complicated. It gives people a reason to spread their ugly rumors. There might be a way, Nathan said slowly. I could release you from the contract early and pay you the full settlement now. You would be free to leave or stay as you chose. Hope and fear battled inside Eliza's chest. If I stayed after that, people would say I was your mistress. That would be even worse for the children. Not if we were married. The words fell between them like stones in a quiet pond. Eliza stared at him, unable to speak. Nathan went on, the words coming faster now. I know it is fast, I know it is complicated, but I love you, Eliza. I love your strength and your kindness and how you brought my family back to life. The twins love you, and if we were married, No one could say anything. You would be my wife, not my employee. The rumors would stop. Nathan, you cannot marry me just to quiet gossip. I am not. I am asking you to marry me because I want to spend my life with you. Because the thought of you leaving in 5 years makes me feel like I am drowning. I am asking because I love you, and I hope you might love me too. I do love you. The words came out in a whisper. But marriage is a huge step. And the children. The children asked me last night when you were going to be their new mama. They want this, Eliza. We all do. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. I was sold at an auction like livestock. How do we know my feelings are real and not just me being grateful to be safe? Is it just gratitude when I walk into a room and your heart speeds up? Is it survival that makes you smile when you hear my voice? Nathan stepped closer. I know how you came here was wrong. But what we have built together, that is real. And you have a choice now. You can say no. You can ask for your release and leave tomorrow. I would honor that. But what would I be leaving? Eliza looked up at him, seeing her future in his eyes. A man I love, children I have come to cherish, a home where I am needed and valued. Why would I choose to walk away from that? Then do not stay. Marry me. Be part of this family for real, in a way that no one can question. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved, not as my employee, but as my partner, my equal, my wife. The town will still talk, Eliza said. They will say it is suspicious that you married me so quickly. Let them. Eventually they will see the truth, that we are a family, that our love is real. Nathan brought her hands to his lips, kissing them gently. I'm not asking you to answer me right now, just think on it. Know that I'm serious, Eliza Moore. I want to marry you and build a life with you. Before she could say a word, Clara's voice rang out from the house. Miss Eliza, Milo put another frog in my shoe. Did not, Milo yelled back. Nathan just smiled. Duty calls. He started to leave, then turned back. Whatever you decide, Eliza, I meant it. You have a real choice, and I'll respect it. He walked away, leaving her standing there with her heart hammering in her chest. A home, a family, a place where she belonged. It was everything she'd ever wanted. She thought about the way her heart soared when he smiled, the comfort she felt just being near him, whether they were fighting fevers or rescuing calves. It wasn't just gratitude she was feeling, it was love, and the children she loved them with her whole heart. They had become her family. In 5 years, she could take her money and be free, or she could choose to stay with this complicated, wonderful family. She could marry Nathan and make this ranch her home for good. The choice was finally hers, and she knew what she was going to do. That evening, Eliza found Nathan on the porch, looking out at the mountains. You have all the time you need to think about it, he said before she could speak. I do not need any more time, Eliza said, taking a steadying breath. But I have to know, is this going to be a real marriage? Or just a business deal to keep the neighbors from talking? It would be real, Nathan said, turning to face her. I want a wife, Eliza, a partner, someone to build a life with, to raise our children with. I want to grow old with you. Is that real enough for you? She could feel a blush rise on her cheeks, but she met his honest gaze. And the contract, the money I owe you? I will burn it first thing in the morning, he promised. You will not owe me a single thing. As my wife, everything I own would be yours. This whole ranch, the money, all of it. We would be equal partners. Nathan's voice was low and steady. The twins, now they might take some time with it. They sure did love their mother, still do. But they love you too, Eliza. It is a different kind of love, but it is just as strong. You are not taking Martha's place. You are bringing something new to our family, something we have all been needing. Eliza looked out at the land turning dark, this wild, beautiful country that now felt like home. She remembered standing on that auction block, feeling like her life had ended. Now, this man was offering her everything she thought was gone forever. Yes, she said, her voice soft. My answer is yes. I will marry you. Nathan stood completely still. You truly mean that? I do. She turned and took his hands. I love you. I love your children. I want to be part of this family for real. I want to stay, not because of a contract, but because it is my choice. Because this is where I belong. The pure joy on Nathan's face was like the sunrise. He pulled her into a hug, holding her so tight she could hardly catch her breath. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for choosing us, for choosing me. He kissed her with all the tenderness and passion he had held back for months. Eliza just melted right into him, her arms wrapping around his neck. The kiss grew deeper, until they were both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. How soon can we do this? Whenever you like. Tomorrow? She laughed, feeling light and happy. We ought to tell the children first and get things in order. Maybe next week. Next week, Nathan agreed. I will ride into town tomorrow and talk to the minister. We can have a small wedding right here at the ranch. Just us. We should let the twins help plan it, he added. Make them a part of it all. That is a fine idea. He kissed her again, this time soft and sweet. You are going to be a wonderful mother to them. I am surely going to try. Eliza put her hand over his heart. I will try to be what all of you need. You already are, he said. They stood on the porch as the night settled in, holding one another and dreaming about their future. For the very first time since her father had passed, Eliza felt a deep and perfect peace. The next morning they called the twins into the kitchen. Clara and Milo sat down, looking a little worried. Are we in some kind of trouble? Milo asked. No, son. Nathan sat down at their level. Miss Eliza and I need to tell you something important, something that changes things for all of us. Clara's eyes got wide. Is Miss Eliza leaving us? No, just the opposite. Nathan looked at Eliza, and she gave him a small nod. I have asked Miss Eliza to marry me, to be my wife and your stepmother, and she said yes. The children were quiet for a long moment. Then Clara jumped up and threw her arms around Eliza's waist. For real? You are going to be our real mama? Only if you want me to be. Eliza hugged the little girl tight. I could never replace your mother, but I love you both very much. I would be honored to officially be part of your family. Milo took a little longer, his face very serious. Papa, did you do this because we said we wanted her to stay? You do not have to marry her just for us. Nathan reached out and tousled his son's hair. I am marrying Miss Eliza because I love her. She makes me happy, and she makes our family feel whole again. The fact that you two love her is just the best part of it all. But what about Mama? Milo's voice was barely a whisper. Will she be sad if we get a new one? Eliza knelt down beside him. Down. Your Mama loved you more than anything. I think she would be happy to know someone is here loving you and taking care of you and your Papa. Love is not like a pie, Milo. There's always enough to share. You can love your Mama's memory and still love me too. Your heart has room for both. Milo looked into her eyes. Then slowly, he nodded. Okay. But you have to promise you will not die like Mama did. The simple request was almost too much to bear. I cannot promise I will live forever, sweetheart. Nobody can. But I can promise to be as careful as I can be, and I will be here for as long as God allows. Is that enough? Milo hid his face in her shoulder. I reckon it will have to be. Clara joined their hug, and suddenly Eliza was holding both of them, feeling the weight of their trust. Nathan watched them, his eyes shining. So, when is the wedding? Clara asked. Can I wear a pretty dress? Next week, and yes, you can, Eliza answered. We will make it a special day for our family. Can I walk Miss Eliza down the aisle? Milo asked. Since she does not have a papa here to do it. Nathan's voice was thick with emotion. That is a wonderful idea, son. Then it is settled. Clara clapped her hands. We are going to be a real family. We already are, Eliza corrected gently. The wedding just makes it official. The twins were already busy making plans, their happy voices filling the kitchen. Across the table, Nathan and Eliza shared a look full of love and wonder. They were taking broken pieces and building something beautiful. It would not always be easy, but they would face it all together. That afternoon, the whole world felt right, but it was just the quiet before the storm. Nathan had ridden into town, leaving Eliza with the twins. Little Clara looked up at her and said, "Your smile is different now. It's a happy secret." Eliza just smiled wider. But then Nathan came home, his face like a thundercloud. He told her that town gossip, fanned by Margaret Winters, had turned ugly. Worse, the local preacher, Reverend Jacobs, flat out refused to marry them, calling it improper. It was a cruel injustice, a town trying to tear apart a family that was just starting to heal. But Nathan wasn't a man who backed down. He looked Eliza square in the eye and promised they would get married, no matter what. That one act of standing up for what's right can change everything. If you've ever felt judged, this story is for you. "He's the preacher, Eliza. He can do as he pleases," Nathan said, his jaw set hard. "But there's another man of God in the next town over, a Reverend Matthews. Doc Morrison says he's a good man who cares more about the truth than talk." Nathan had already sent word, asking if he would come. "And if he says no," Nathan promised, taking her hands, "we'll find someone else. We will be husband and wife." But that night, Eliza couldn't help but worry. A town's judgment is a heavy thing, strong enough to poison the good life they were trying to build. 3 days later, a buggy rolled up to the ranch. A man with kind, weathered eyes stepped out. "Mr. Hale, Miss Moore," he said with a calm voice. "I am Reverend Matthews. I came to talk about your wedding." They invited him inside and told him the whole story right from the start. They didn't hold anything back, from the shameful auction to the slow, steady way love had grown between them. When they finished, Reverend Matthews was quiet for a good long while. Then a smile spread across his face. "I have been a minister for 30 years, he said, "and I have learned to see real love when it is in front of me. What you two have is real. It is complicated, yes, but it is true. I would be honored to perform your ceremony." Tears of pure relief streamed down Eliza's face. "When would you like to do it?" the Reverend asked. Nathan looked at Eliza, a question in his eyes. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice firm. "Let's not wait another minute." The news sent the twins into a flurry of excitement. They spent the rest of the day picking wildflowers and helping Eliza get her best dress ready. That night, Eliza stood by her window, looking out at the moonlit ranch. She thought about the scared girl she used to be, a girl who thought her life was over. She never could have dreamed of a life like this, a life full of hope. It seemed the darkest paths sometimes lead to the brightest clearings. The next morning, Eliza woke to find Clara sitting at the foot of her bed. "I had a dream about Mama," the little girl said softly. "She was in her wedding dress, the one Papa keeps in his trunk. She told me to give it to you." Eliza's heart ached. "Oh, honey, I couldn't. That dress is a special memory of your mother." But Clara was certain. "She said you are family now. She would want you to wear it." The dress, wrapped carefully in cloth, was made of ivory silk with beautiful lace. It fit Eliza like it was made just for her. Standing before the mirror, she looked like a bride. She looked like she belonged. Milo appeared at the door, his eyes wide. "You look like a princess," he whispered. "Papa's gonna cry when he sees you." "Your papa doesn't cry," Eliza said, her own voice thick with emotion. "He does sometimes," Milo said, "when he thinks we are not looking." Eliza knelt and pulled both children into a hug. "Thank you for sharing this with me, for letting me be part of your family." "It is not hard," Clara said simply. "You are not new anymore. You are our Mama Eliza." Just before noon, Eliza stood in her room, her hands shaking just a little. She was about to become Mrs. Nathan Hale. A soft knock came at the door. It was Nathan. He stood there for a moment, his eyes taking in the sight of her in the beautiful dress, and his jaw went slack. The wonder in his expression when he saw her nearly stole her breath. "You are wearing Martha's dress," he said quietly. "Clara gave it to me," she explained, suddenly unsure. "Is it all right?" Nathan walked over and took her hands in his. "It is more than all right. Martha would have loved you, Eliza. She would have loved seeing you care for our children and bring life back into this home. She would have wanted you to wear this dress." His voice hitched. "Because you are not replacing her. You are continuing what she started, loving us the way she would have wanted." Tears streamed down Eliza's face. "I will take good care of them, of you. I promise. I know you will." He wiped her tears away. "And I will take care of you the way you deserve." "You saved me that day," Eliza said with conviction. "You gave me a home, a purpose, and a family. You gave me everything." "No, you gave me more," Nathan said, cupping her face in his hands. "You gave me my life back. You gave my children their laughter back." "Reverend Matthews is here," Milo called from the other room. "It is time." Nathan smiled. "Ready to become Mrs. Hale?" "I have been ready for a long time," she said. They walked out together, and the sight of the main room made Eliza gasp. The twins had filled it with wildflowers in jars. Purple asters and golden black-eyed Susans glowed in the sunlight pouring through the windows. Reverend Matthews stood before the fireplace, and Dr. Morrison waited to one side. To her surprise, another couple stood there as well. "John and Sarah Fleming," Nathan whispered. "Our nearest neighbors from 5 miles east. Good people. I asked them to be our witnesses." The Flemings smiled with real warmth, and some of Eliza's nervousness melted away. Not everyone in this country listened to town gossip. "Miss Moore, are you ready?" Reverend Matthews asked. "I am. But first," Eliza turned to Milo, "you promised to walk me to your father." The boy's chest puffed out with pride as he offered her his arm. Clara took her other arm, and together the three of them walked across the room to Nathan. "Who gives this woman to be married?" the Reverend asked, changing the old words. "We do," the twins said together. Nathan took Eliza's hands, and a feeling of rightness settled deep in her soul. This was where she was meant to be. This was her home. As the ceremony began, she knew it was all true. He talked about love being a choice, a promise you wake up and make new every single day. He spoke on how a family is built on that kind of solid ground. He mentioned sorrow and healing, how love could mend a life if you just had the grit to take it. Matthew looked out at the small group of friends. "Nathan and Eliza are standing before us today with a story some folks might raise an eyebrow at," he said. "They found each other when things were hard for both of them. But I've seen a heap of marriages, and the best ones don't start out perfect. They're built on honest-to-goodness love and respect." He turned to Nathan. "Nathan Hale, do you take this woman to be your wife? Do you promise to love and honor her through sick days and healthy ones, whether you're rich or poor, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Nathan's voice was steady as a rock. "I promise all that, and then some. I promise to see her as my partner in all things and build a life where she knows her worth every single day." Matthew smiled and then looked at Eliza. "Eliza Moore, do you take this man to be your husband? Do you promise to love and honor him through sickness and health for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" "I do." Eliza's voice was clear as a bell. "I promise to be his partner and his friend, and to help raise his children with all the love I have." "The rings," Matthew said gently. Nathan brought out 2 simple gold bands he'd bought right there in town. He slid one onto Eliza's finger. "With this ring, I marry you. All that I have is now yours to share." Eliza took the other ring, her hands shaking just a little, and slid it onto Nathan's finger. "With this ring, I marry you. All that I am, I give to you." "Then by the power given to me, I now pronounce you man and wife," Matthew beamed. "Nathan, you can go on and kiss your bride." Nathan gathered Eliza in his arms and gave her a sweet, thorough kiss right in front of everybody. The twins let out a cheer, and Dr. Morrison clapped his hands. The Flemings just smiled. Eliza felt a joy so bright. It was like sunshine filling her up from the inside. When they finally parted, Nathan rested his forehead on hers. "Hello, Mrs. Hale." "Hello, husband." Clara and Milo came barreling in, wrapping their arms around both of them in a big, happy hug. Eliza laughed, holding them all close. They were a family now. The get-together afterward was simple but full of happiness. Sarah Fleming had brought over a beautiful cake with little candied flowers on it. They all ate and talked and laughed, and for a little while the rest of the world and its wagging tongues just faded away. As the afternoon started turning to evening, the Flemings got ready to head home. At the door, Sarah took Eliza's hands. "Don't you pay any mind to the town gossips," she said, her voice low. "John and I, we know the truth. We've seen how you've changed everything for the better. That's what's real. And it matters more than anything Margaret Winters has to say." "Thank you," Eliza said, her heart full. "Thanks for being here today." "We're neighbors. It's what neighbors do," Sarah smiled. "And our door's always open if you need anything." After they left, Dr. Morrison stayed a moment more. "You're good for him," he told Eliza. "Good for all of them. I was worried sick about Nathan after Martha passed, but you brought him back." "He brought me back too," Eliza said quietly. "I reckon we saved each other." The doctor nodded, satisfied, and took his leave. Reverend Matthews was the last one out. He shook Nathan's hand firmly. "You love her well," he said. "It's a rare woman who can forgive how things started and choose to stay." "I will," Nathan promised. "Every day for the rest of my life." And then it was just the four of them, a brand new family. The twins were buzzing with excitement, chattering away about the wedding and the cake. Eliza listened with a smile, feeling happy and content, as she helped Clara out of her fancy dress. "You tired?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Just overwhelmed," Eliza admitted, leaning her head back against his chest. "In the best kind of way. This morning I was your housekeeper. Tonight I'm your wife. It doesn't feel quite real yet." "Oh, it's real." Nathan turned her around to face him. "You're mine now. And I'm yours. For the rest of our lives." "I like the sound of that," Eliza said, tracing the line of his jaw. "Nathan Hale, my husband. That'll take some getting used to." "We've got time," he said, kissing her palm. "All the time in the world." He led her inside, through the quiet house, and into his room. Their room. Eliza's heart beat a little faster as he closed the door. The look in his eyes was all love. "I've waited months to hold you like this," he said, his voice a little rough. "Months of wanting you." "You don't have to hold back anymore," Eliza whispered, her fingers finding the buttons on his shirt. "I'm your wife now. I want you." What happened next was tender and honest. Nathan treated her like she was the most precious thing in the world, and Eliza gave him her whole heart. Afterward, lying in his arms and listening to the steady beat of his heart, a deep peace settled over her. "Thank you," Nathan murmured into her hair, the new name. "It seems you've settled right in. I suppose marriage was your only choice considering the situation." Nathan's grip on Eliza's hand became iron, but she stepped forward before he could say a word. "You're right about that, Mrs. Winters," Eliza said, her voice clear as a bell. "Marriage was my very best choice. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I found a good man who loves me, and a family that needed me just as much as I needed them. If you find that scandalous, well, that says a whole lot more about you than it does about us." Margaret's face turned beet red. "Why, I never. How dare you?" "How dare I what? Stand up for myself? Refuse to let you shame me for finding happiness?" Eliza's voice was steady as a rock. "I was sold at an auction because my father's debts ruined my life. Nathan Hale bought my contract and gave me honest work. In time, we fell in love. There is nothing improper about our story, Mrs. Winters. The only thing improper here is you spreading lies to hurt good folks. Everyone knows. Everyone knows gossip, Eliza cut in, looking at the other women, who now seemed mighty interested in their own shoes. Few people know the truth. I understand why you might think the worst. It looks a certain way, I'll grant you. But my husband is an honorable man. Our marriage is real, and it was blessed by a minister. If you can't accept that, that's your business. But you will not make me feel ashamed of it. She took Nathan's arm. Come on, darling, let's go home. They turned and walked away, leaving a crowd of stunned women in their wake. Nathan was quiet all the way to the wagon. Then he pulled Eliza into a fierce hug, right there in the middle of the street. You were magnificent, he said, his voice thick with pride. Truly magnificent. I'm just tired of being ashamed, Eliza whispered. Tired of letting small-minded people cut me down. We haven't done anything to apologize for. No, we have not, Nathan said, kissing her forehead. Let them talk. We know our truth. The twins looked up, their faces full of worry. Are folks going to be mean to us now? Milo asked. Some might be, Eliza said honestly, kneeling down to their level. But we can't control what other people do. We can only control how we act. And we're going to act with honesty and love, Clara added quietly. And not let 'em see it hurts. Oh, sweet girl, it is all right if it hurts, Eliza said, pulling them both into a hug. We just don't let them win by making us feel small. We're a family. That is all that matters. On the ride home, Clara asked, Mama Eliza, do you ever regret it? Coming here? Eliza looked at her family, the children beside her, Nathan guiding the horses. Not for a single second, she said with all her heart. Every hard road I walked led me straight to y'all. How could I ever regret that? That night, Nathan came to her holding a few pieces of paper. What's this? She asked. Your contract. He handed it to her along with a match. I want you to be the one to burn it. I should have done this the day we got married. You were never my property, Eliza. But I want you to be the one to end that chapter for good. Eliza took the papers that had bound her to 5 years of service. She struck the match and touched it to the corner. The flame caught, eating the words that had defined her past, turning debt and obligation into nothing but ash. When the last ember faded, Nathan pulled her close. You're free, he whispered. You stay because you choose to. I know, she said, holding him tight. Thank you for this. Winter settled over the ranch, and Eliza learned its rhythms. The children grew taller, their grief for their first mother softening into sweet memory. Christmas arrived, and Eliza filled the house with the scent of pine and baked cookies, building new traditions for their family. On Christmas morning, the children gave her a handmade wooden frame. Inside was a drawing of 4 stick figures holding hands. Papa, Mama Eliza, Clara, and Milo. So you remember, you're really ours, Clara explained. Tears streamed down Eliza's face as she clutched the simple gift. I love it. I love y'all so much. We love you too, Mama, Milo said, the word finally sounding natural and easy. Later, Nathan gave her a small box. Inside was a delicate gold locket. He urged her to open it. It held 2 tiny pictures. One was of Martha with the baby twins. The other was of Eliza with them, taken just last month. Both of you, Nathan said softly. Both mothers they were blessed to have. You are not replacing Martha. You are adding to her legacy. You're both part of our story. Eliza couldn't speak. She just held him, overwhelmed by his goodness. By spring, the talk in town had mostly died down. People saw the Hales at church, saw how happy the children were, and saw the plain-as-day love between Nathan and Eliza. Sarah Fleming became a true friend, and soon invited Eliza to a ladies' quilting group. The other women, once suspicious, were now kind and welcoming. One afternoon, a wagon came up the drive. Eliza's heart skipped a beat when she saw it was Margaret Winters, all alone. Eliza stood up from her garden, wiping the dirt from her hands. "Mrs. Winters." "Mrs. Hale," Margaret said, climbing down from the wagon. "I came to apologize. For the rumors I spread and the things I said, it was wrong of me." Eliza was so shocked she could hardly speak. "Thank you. But what changed your mind?" "My brother Thomas," Margaret confessed, looking ashamed. "He tried to force Nathan to sell the ranch by threatening to spread even worse lies about you. When Nathan refused, I finally saw Thomas for who he is. He's not a concerned neighbor. He is a greedy, cruel man who will ruin anyone to get what he wants." Their grief for their mother softened, turning from a sharp pain into a gentle memory. When Christmas rolled around, Eliza made it a special one, decorating the house and baking cookies with the children, starting new traditions for their little family. On Christmas morning, Clara and Milo gave her a gift they had made themselves, a wooden frame with a drawing of 4 stick figures holding hands. "Papa, Mama Eliza, Clara and Milo," Clara explained. "So you remember. You're really ours now." Tears welled up in Eliza's eyes as she clutched the frame. "I love it. I love y'all so much." "We love you too, Mama," Milo said, the word coming out easy and natural. Later, Nathan gave Eliza her gift. It was a beautiful gold locket. "Open it," he told her. Inside were 2 tiny pictures. One was of Martha with the twins when they were babies, and the other was of Eliza with them, taken just last month. "Both of you," Nathan said softly. "Both mothers they were blessed to have. You're not replacing Martha. You're adding to our family's story." Eliza was too choked up to speak. She just held him close, so thankful for his kindness. By the time spring came, things in town had started to change. The gossip hadn't vanished, but it had lost its sting. People saw the Hales in church, saw how happy the children were, and saw the love between Nathan and Eliza. Slowly but surely, folks started to come around. Sarah Fleming became a true friend and even invited Eliza to join a ladies' quilting group. The women there were kind, and after a while they accepted her completely. One afternoon, a wagon pulled up the drive. It was Margaret Winters, all by herself. Eliza stood up from her gardening, her heart cautious. "Mrs. Hale," Margaret said, her voice stiff. "May I have a word?" "Of course," Eliza said, motioning toward the porch. "Can I get you some water?" They sat in a thick silence until Eliza came back with 2 glasses. "I came here to apologize," Margaret said, not beating around the bush, "for the rumors I spread. It was wrong of me." Eliza was stunned. "Thank you, but what made you change your mind?" "My brother, Thomas. He tried to force Nathan to sell the ranch by threatening to spread even worse lies about your family. When Nathan stood up to him, Thomas showed his true colors. He's not a concerned neighbor. He's a greedy man who'd ruin anyone to get what he wants, what he was after." Margaret just wrung her hands in her lap. "I was so set on believing his side of things I could not see the truth. You are not the villain in this story. I am, and I am so sorry." "What happened with your brother?" Eliza asked. Margaret looked down. "Nathan called him out. In front of the whole town. He aired out every single one of Thomas's schemes and lies." Her voice was quiet. "Now my brother's name is Mud, and because I helped him, so is mine." She looked up, her eyes full of regret. "I am not asking for your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I finally see things clearly. Y'all are good, decent people. You did not deserve what I put you through." Eliza took a moment before she spoke. "Thank you for saying that. It takes a strong person to own up to their mistakes. And yes, I will forgive you. But please understand, I am doing this for my own peace. It does not make what you did acceptable. You hurt my family." "I know," Margaret said as she stood to leave. "I will not take up any more of your time. I just had to say my piece." After she was gone, Nathan found Eliza sitting on the porch. "You doing all right?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "Margaret Winters just apologized to me. Nathan's eyebrows shot up. She did now? She said you called Thomas out in public, that you ruined his reputation. Eliza looked right at her husband. You did not tell me about that. It happened yesterday, Nathan said, his jaw tight. Thomas backed me into a corner outside the bank, started making threats. I had finally had enough. I told him, and telling every soul in earshot what kind of man he truly is. I'll tell them how he tried to ruin our family, and how he's been conniving to take this ranch for years. When I'm through, he won't be able to buy a cup of coffee in this town. That's a mighty big risk. Maybe so, but I am finished with him hurting us, and I'm sure as heck finished with anyone making you feel small. Nathan squeezed her hand. You are my wife, and the mother of my children. You will get the respect you're owed. Eliza rested her head on his shoulder, feeling safe and cherished. I love you. I love you more. Summer rolled in hot and heavy, and the whole ranch just seemed to explode with life. It thrived with both of them pulling their weight, Nathan with the cattle and the land, Eliza with the house and the books. They were a team through and through. Then, one evening in early July, Eliza knew she was pregnant. She waited until the twins were asleep to tell Nathan, watching his face for any sign. A baby? His voice was a soft whisper full of awe. Are we really going to have a baby? Yes, she said. Lord willing. Sometime late this winter. He pulled her into a hug so tight she could hardly draw a breath. Thank you for this. Eliza laughed and reminded him, we did this together. I can't take all the credit. The next morning they told Claire and Milo. The two were just tickled pink talking about whether they wanted a brother or a sister and how they would help. Will the baby call you Mama Eliza? Clara asked. The baby will likely just call me Mama, Eliza answered. I'll be the only mother they ever know. Is that all right? The twins thought it over real serious for a moment. That makes sense, Milo said. We had our first Mama, and now we have you. But the baby just gets you, so it ought to just be Mama. The simple truth of it warmed her heart. In the quiet months that followed, the twins would talk to her growing belly and draw pictures for their new sibling. Then, late in February, a real blue norther blew in, howling and dumping snow all over the plains. That was the night Eliza's time came. Nathan saddled up and rode right into that blizzard to get Dr. Morrison. The labor was long and hard, but as the sun came up over the snow-covered fields, a baby's cry echoed through the house. A little girl, Dr. Morrison announced, handing the wailing bundle to Eliza. Healthy as can be. Eliza looked at her daughter's perfect face and dark hair and felt a wave of love so strong it nearly took her breath away. Nathan appeared at the door, still covered in snow, his face tight with worry. Come meet your daughter, Eliza said, her voice thick. He walked to the bed and just stared at the tiny baby. She's perfect, he whispered, kissing Eliza's forehead. Thank you for her. The twins scrambled up on the bed a moment later. She's so little, Clara breathed. What's her name? We decided on Hope, Eliza said, because that's what she is to us. Hope for our family. Hope Hale. Milo tried the name out. I like it. Hello there, baby Hope. They spent that morning as a family of 5, just taking in the miracle of it all. Once the house was quiet and Hope was asleep in her cradle, Nathan and Eliza sat by the fire. A year back, I'd have never dreamed of this, Nathan said softly. Being this happy. Just surviving was all I knew. Eliza took his hand. And look where we are now. You changed everything for me, Eliza. My real life started the day I brought you here. No, Eliza corrected him gently. Our lives started again the day I chose to stay. Not because of some paper, but because I wanted to be here. We chose this, Nathan. We chose each other. That's what makes it real. The months rolled by. Hope grew and laughed, and the twins couldn't get enough of their baby sister. The gossip in town faded away once folks saw this family was the real deal, built on a love that was plain to see. On a warm autumn day, Eliza stood on the porch, holding Hope and watching Nathan teaching the twins how to rope a fence post out in the pasture. She thought about the scared girl she used to be on that auction platform, thinking her life was over. She couldn't have been more wrong. That awful day was just the start of a hard road that brought her right here, to her home. Clara came running up to the porch, her face lit up. "Mama, come look. I roped it on my first try." Mama. The word hung in the air, simple and true. She was not Mama Eliza anymore. She was just Mama. "I'm coming, sweetheart," Eliza called out, walking across the yard to her family. Nathan caught her eye and gave her a smile that told their whole story. The rough start, the slow trust, and the choice they made to love instead of fear. Yes, she had been bought like property, but that was not the end of it. In the end, he had chosen her, and just as important, she had chosen him right back. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.